Would you lawyer up? This story about an HOA president and the most terrible neighbor ever is insane. Here's what's up. I, 31 female, am the HOA president of a 14-house neighborhood. This neighborhood was built in 2017 and 18 by each individual neighbor, by hand with supervision alongside professional contractors and subcontractors as part of a low-income sweat equity government program backed by the USDA RD. Our HOA is self-governed, meaning the board members live in the neighborhood and we don't use a management company. Our dues are $360 per year. Average HOA dues for our county are between $200 to $500 per month, but ours are extremely low because it's a low-income neighborhood and we don't have like tennis courts, play areas, common areas to hang out in, and so on. 100% of the money goes to road and retention pond maintenance, insurance, taxes, and so on. This year, we'll spend over half of our total account balance getting our 2 roads and 2 cul-de-sacs a new asphalt seal coat to prevent further damage and cracking. Board members, including myself, don't get paid and actually often spend out of pocket ourselves for things like stamps and printer ink, food for our meetings, and so on. Things that any normal nonprofit would have a budget for. As an HOA, the board has a history of being extremely lenient with enforcing the rules, even to our financial loss. We have never charged a late fee, even after waiting over a year for late payments, never written anyone up for any of the countless violations, never done anything to enforce the rules, actually because, well, to be fair, the rules were just handed to us by this government program, and they don't make any logical sense for a rural neighborhood. All we're trying to do is make sure the roads don't fall apart, add some speed bumps, and keep the retention ponds functional. Functional, not aesthetic. They're overgrown as heck and behind tall locked fences to keep kids away from tragic accidents. Unfortunately, all those things cost way more than we bring in per year, so we've been saving up the dues money, not raising rates either, the entire 4 years that we've been collecting it. This year, we can finally afford street sealing, the highest priority and highest cost item. We're not your expensive or a measure your grass citation happy HOA. Now, we do have one neighbor who has been difficult from the very start of the build. This neighbor didn't show up to mandatory team meetings, didn't put in her required 30 hours of labor per week, and just generally screwed off while the rest of us built the house for her. Everyone else who put in the time, effort, and energy attended Saturday morning group construction meetings every week for a year and followed the very explicit group rules that we were all told that we'd be kicked out of the program for breaking, was understandably annoyed, and then upset, and then downright angry that apparently the rules were just for rule followers and didn't have any real consequences. After a year of her following a pattern of don't work or show up, have a meeting with the program directors, not neighbors, about her behavior, show up once, repeat, she got her keys and moved in alongside the rest of us. Then the real problem started. Like I said, the HOA is cheap. $360 a year or $30 a month. 13 low-income households pay their dues every year, and some of them have paid late or even very late. But they made contact, they explained the situations and paid eventually, and then we're chill, even though it's within our rights and contract to charge interest and even file a lien against any unpaying property. In our 4 years as a neighborhood, the same problem. Neighbor has paid $40 cash, total. All other neighbors who all qualify for the same low-income program have paid $360 every year, totaling $1,440 per family. For 4 years, all of our very chill attempts at collecting dues have been met with a text from her, saying something along the lines of, "Sounds great, unfortunately, I can't pay that right now." Or no response at all, or an error because she changed her number or email or whatever. To our knowledge, she's also not made a mortgage payment ever. If she gets a job, they'll garnish her wages, but the USDA plus COVID is just very exceptionally slow to foreclose on her. I know the process was started a couple of years ago, but nothing has changed and she still lives in the house. Here's the thing though. She and her boyfriend, probably the mastermind here, are terrible neighbors. They sell illegal substances and stolen goods. They don't have jobs but consistently have new tools and new toys. They have dozens of visitors all day and all night who go straight to the back garage door and leave after 5 minutes. They have loud altercations which have resulted in police involvement more than once, but nobody presses charges. A teenager living there OD'd. He survived, thank God. They do not pay for garbage service and instead pile bags upon bags of trash onto their back porch and against the fence that their next door neighbor, unfortunately me, paid out of pocket to build. This has led to a giant rat infestation and my dogs pulling trash into my yard under the fence. They burn their garbage in a barrel out back. And last night during a burn, they must have tossed in some aerosol can or propane tank or something because an explosion shook our bedroom and rocked our TV and hanging photos. Her response to my, "Hey, is everything okay over there? Because there was a literal explosion," text was, and always inconveniently is, "Well, I don't know, I wasn't home or just pulling in." Just all around trashy. As an HOA, we, myself, the treasurer and secretary, decided a long time ago that the only way we'd ever get paid was by recording a real estate lien against her, so that when the house goes to auction, at least the bank will pay us. We got misleading information about filing liens from the original program that we built the houses through, and because of that, we wasted 2 years trying to chase down the paperwork to file. Turns out, civilians can't just file a lien, but we finally found a local company that specializes in liens who's going to do it for $356.60. Cool, great, done. As stated in our bylaws, the homeowner is responsible for all their debts as well as for any expenses that we have to pay to collect them. After the lien and the interest, 12% per year, and we didn't even compound it, on her 4 years of unpaid dues, minus $40, she owes over $2,800. It's not a ton, but it's definitely not nothing. It also cost $120 or so to have the lien removed after payment. Yesterday, I met with a lawyer to start the process of foreclosing on the lien. It's within our legal rights and abilities to do so. Another cost that we pay out of pocket, but can add to the total cost of the lien as she's responsible for paying any legal fees related to collecting her debts. I called around till I found the cheapest lawyer. His basic fee for lien foreclosures is about $2,500 compared to the $7,500 that I was quoted by the lawyer that the lien company recommended. We're not trying to screw her over here, is what I'm trying to get at. We're not racking up billable hours with the best and the brightest, and actually this lawyer seems like he doesn't even know what he's doing, but we can afford him at least. We don't even have a bill yet, because yesterday's meeting was just a free initial consultation. So our out-of-pocket expenses so far are $356.60, plus like $6 for certified mail, plus potentially $120-ish for closing the lien if she pays it. The lawyer said that what usually happens is that both her and the lender, USDA, get taken to court. The lender then pays her debts and adds it to her total mortgage. Side note, the current boyfriend isn't on the home loan, so very unfortunately, he isn't legally responsible for any of the house-related finances, even if he's the driving force behind the undesirable activity. Well, yesterday, she texted another board member who also happens to be her neighbor on the other side, asking if we'd settle with her. They have a more friendly relationship than she has with anyone else in the neighborhood. My instant reaction was, heck no. In 4 years, she's made no attempt to settle, get on a payment plan, or do anything at all to lessen her debts. That, plus the overall pattern that she's demonstrated of do nothing till she's in trouble, do bare minimum to get out of trouble, repeat, on top of the general nuisance property complaints, have done very little to foster goodwill between her and anyone else. And honestly, I don't want her to live here anymore. We're all low income, but she's the only problem and nuisance property and drug house. I don't want to be forced into legal action every freaking year because it's the only thing that gets her to actually make a payment or one single attempt at paying anything. The other board member asked her to give us a number and we'd talk, and we haven't heard what the number is yet. I think I'd be willing to waive the interest only, but not any of the expenses that we've already paid for or the cost of removing the lien. But I don't want to. I want to take legal action. I want to take her and her lender, the USDA, to court in hopes that the USDA will finally actually sell her house and get the heck out. My gripe isn't just with her, it's also with the USDA RD for allowing her to stay in the program after countless complaints, even while she broke every rule and then some, including instances on site where police had to be called. So at this point, I want the USDA to feel the giant pain in the butt that we felt for 4 years due to their own enabling, negligence, and refusal to enforce their own program rules. Am I the butt for thinking that we should move forward with the lawyer and take her and the USDA to court? Commenter says, and OP replies, not the butt. She's never going to pay y'all fully. The only way you can fix this is to rip the problem out by the root, and to do that, you've got to go through the courts. Encourage your fellow members to strengthen their resolve. It sounds like there's kids in the neighborhood, and you don't need a tragedy to happen. OP replies, there are literally 20 plus kids in the neighborhood. Only one household has no kids, and several have 5 or more. Tragedy feels like impending doom right now. Time to lawyer up. I mean, you're going to have kids in danger here, and they've had 4 years to actually do something, and they don't. They're just taking advantage of you, walking all over you, OP. Dad passed away. His condo HOA sent me a nasty letter since I'm not 55 and older, posted by Carrie. My dad passed away unexpectedly last spring, and I was the executor of his estate. My mom passed 2 years earlier, and I didn't know Dad updated his deed after Mom died to a ladybird deed, transferring the condo to my sister and I equally when he died. This meant that we did not have to go to probate court, thank goodness. It's good to note that the deed immediately updated in the county record system upon his death, and our county allows public searches of these records. His condo was in an over 55 community common in Florida, and I lived about 15 minutes away from him. Despite the death being unexpected, I was able to clean out the condo, freshen it up, do some repairs, donate, list and sell items. I was able to distribute family pieces to other family members, even hire a realtor, and list it within 3 weeks of his passing. This was no small feat, as I work full-time for a tech startup, which is so many work hours. I'm a single parent, and my sister lives in the Midwest. The first thing I had to do was get the death certificate and deed to submit to the HOA and security office to have my name and phone number as the owner at the guarded gatehouse, so I'd be called when contractors, donation centers, and potential buyers went there. The HOA was aware of his death. They had a copy of the certificate. A month after his death, 1 week after the condo went on the market, I get a nasty letter from the HOA demanding proof that I'm 55 and older because blah blah blah, our community blah blah standards and rules. I ignore the letter because nothing I'd respond with would be productive, and I wanted to not make waves when it came time for a buyer to get approved by the HOA. 4 months later, we get a buyer, go into contract, and she submits her HOA application. And we wait. Week 1, week 2, week 3, no response from the HOA. I, my realtor, the buyer's agent, and the buyer all call and email asking for an update with no response. Every month I'm paying bills out of his account, including HOA fees, renewed property insurance, and had to stop over there every few days to make sure all was good. My grief was coming out sideways since I didn't really address it. I focused on the estate tasks. I finally had enough. Here are some snippets of the email I sent to the HOA when I again requested an update on the approval. This was the only thing holding up the closing. HOA has absolutely no problem sending a terribly cruel and insensitive letter to me asking for proof that my sister and I are over 55 to have the right to own property in this community. Sending that letter so soon after his death is unconscionable. However, your team can't be bothered to answer emails and return calls. HOA and property management company know that the property was transferred as part of a death because I went to the HOA office to update the owner record and security office, and to do so, I had to provide a copy of the death certificate in both instances. Your office knows the unit is on the market because my realtor provided her information to security. There was a lockbox on the door, and the security logs show numerous showings. You know it's on the market because I paid $50 for the budget, financials, and HOA documents from your office to give to my realtor. At the time I received the letter, the property was already on the market. Dad passed away on this date, and I had that condo on the market the first week of May. I have done everything in my power to get it in on the market and in contract with a 55-plus-year-old buyer to stay within your guidelines. Could you personally turn around an estate while grieving so fast? I did, and am trying to finalize this last piece of the estate so my family can start closing this open wound. Whomever is monitoring the deed transfer needs to do the morally right thing and double check that you're not sending nastygrams to relatives of the deceased so soon, and cross-check to see that if a relative is doing their level best to sell the property. A simple Realtor or Zillow search will show if it's on the market, or maybe just talk to the people within your office. This is a senior community, and I cannot be the first or only executor of an estate that was passed to someone under 55. This can't be new for this area. Or maybe I am rare, seeing as both of my parents are gone before I even turned 44. Please note that my parents didn't have a mortgage. This sale is all profit for the estate. I could have put the condo on the market at a lower price that would guarantee a quicker sell, but I didn't want to hurt property values and comps for the neighbors surrounding my dad, who were very good to both of my parents. This buyer is buying it for $90,000 more than my parents did in 2010. You will see that I have not paid the November HOA payment, since our closing date should have been in October if your team had turned this around in an appropriate time frame. You can get November's prorated portion of the HOA fee from me and the buyer during the closing. Want your money? Do your job and send the approval letter, and I will be able to complete my job by ensuring that someone who is 55 plus owns the property. Those jerks sent the letter via email within an hour of my email. No message in the body of the email, just the approval letter attached. The day of closing, I did give the daytime security guard a thank you card with a gift card for all of her help and the extra work created by having a ton of businesses and buyers come through the gate. She actually saw me an hour after he died when I ran over there to get items for the funeral home. I'll always remember her kindness each time that she'd see me. HOA tried to punish us, told us to stop them if we can. Malicious compliance costs him 16% of the annual HOA income, and the cameras are still installed today. Posted by First Contribution 236. Get ready. This happened several years ago and is a multi-year long story. I'll keep it as succinct as possible. We installed cameras in front of our home that were looking at our vehicles. Part of the camera angles did overlook parts of two neighbors' properties, one backyard and one side yard. The cameras were battery operated and had a function where you could gray out areas that you didn't want to film. When motion occurred in the grayed out areas, the cameras would not be activated to film. The neighbors' entire properties and several bushels on our property were grayed out. We did this when installing them. One of the neighbors was a friend and had no issues with this whatsoever. We showed her the camera angle and she said that she didn't care whether or not we grayed out that area, but we still left it grayed out over battery life concerns. The other neighbor's name was Karen. Not really, but we all know why I chose that name. Karen was on the HOA board, and as you can imagine, we didn't get along with Karen or the HOA board. We told Karen about the camera and showed her the grayed out areas at the same time that we told our friendly neighbor about it. It was simply an FYI conversation. We're not on friendly terms, by the way. Not an asking permission conversation. She told us to take the cameras down immediately, or we would regret it. About a week after we hung the camera up, we got a notice from our HOA that we were violating the bylaws. The bylaw in question? A nuisance to your neighbors bylaw. There wasn't a specific bylaw preventing placement of cameras, so this is all they could find to try to punish us. We responded with a letter detailing how we were not violating any bylaws or laws in general, and asked them to cease and desist. We all know how these stories go, though. They did not cease, and they did not desist. Their first response? The HOA has the right to enforce these bylaws. Try to stop us if you think you can. These types of responses were, unfortunately, quite common from this board. We entered this battle with one goal in mind: to cost them as much money and time as possible. The HOA hired a lawyer specifically to fight us. To my knowledge, this has not happened to any other residents. In the following 4 months, we ended up costing the HOA over $4,000 in lawyer's fees fighting this battle. For reference, the entire HOA income was around $25,000 per year. When it came time for our official HOA hearing over the matter, we had successfully postponed it, thanks to an attorney friend, 3 separate times. There were over 100 back and forth emails with the HOA attorney and ourselves. Each one of those emails was a 15-minute expense for the HOA, and I was happy to follow up a follow-up question with another follow-up question if it meant that the HOA attorney was going to keep billing them. Did I say follow up enough times? We didn't actually want to take this battle to court, so we ended up removing the cameras the day of the hearing to prevent being fined, even if the fine wouldn't hold up in court. The HOA decided in the hearing that we were guilty, surprise, surprise, of violating the bylaw. They couldn't fine us, as the bylaws don't allow a fine until after a hearing has been held, and the cameras were already removed. In the end, the punishment was a sternly written piece of paper on the attorney's letterhead delivered via certified mail that stated we were not allowed to place a camera on our home that had the potential to invade a neighbor's privacy. Keep in mind, the letter specifically stated that the camera could not be placed on our home. We left the cameras off of the home for about 4 months, until the annual HOA meeting. You should have seen the look on the HOA board's faces when I asked them to explain the $4,000 line item for attorney's fees that simply stated title searches, attorney fees. The board actually tried to hide the fact that they spent $4,000 trying to fight us over a couple of cameras by putting the fees in as title searches. Needless to say, that meeting did not go well for them. About half of them lost their positions on the board. The other half, including Karen, unfortunately, remained on the board. About a week after the annual meeting, we installed new cameras, facing the same direction as the prior cameras, only this time we installed a post in the ground and mounted the cameras to that post. The admonishment we received after the hearing specifically stated that we were not allowed to install cameras on our home and said nothing about putting them on a post. They did send a letter to try to tell us to remove the cameras, but a sternly worded response indicating that we were prepared to fight them actually worked this time around. I guess they didn't want to spend another $4,000 fighting us. We didn't receive any follow-up responses, and the cameras on the post are still installed to this day, over 2 years and running strong. Sued my HOA. My lawyers destroyed HOA Karen in court. Click the video on your screen so you find out how, and I'll see you there.